Welcome friends to the Computing Assistant. Today we are gonna talk about the SSDs and the HDDs. Computers are becoming faster and faster these days, and so are the memories used in them. The two mostly used forms of secondary storage in the market are the SSDs and the HDDs. So we will look at both of these one by one. We'll also look at the differences between them and try to decide which one is the right one for you. First up, let us talk about the HDDs. HDD abbreviates from hard disk drive. They are also known as the hard disk, hard drive, or fixed disk in the common usage. A hard disk drive is an electromechanical storage unit that stores data magnetically and retrieves data using magnetic storage techniques. The device consists of one or more disks coated with magnetic material called as platters, and a head that moves over it to read and write the data magnetically. The SSDs were introduced in 1956 by IBM and they were invented in 1954 by an IBM team led by Ray Johnson, who is an American inventor and computer pioneer who is considered as the father of the hard disk drive. More than 200 companies have produced HDDs historically, although after extensive industry consolidation, most of the units today are manufactured by Toshiba, Seagate, and Western Digital. HDDs dominate the data storage volume in the server areas. The production of HDDs is growing slowly, but the revenues and shipments have been declining due to the introduction of the SSDs, which are becoming cheaper and provide better functionalities. The two most common forms of the HDDs are the 3.5-inch drives, which are used in desktop computers, and the 2.5-inch drive, which are used in the portable laptop computers. HDDs are connected to the computers via the standard interface cables such as the PATA, parallel ATA, SATA, the serial ATA, USB or SAS, serial attached SCSI cables. We will talk about these interfaces on a later date. An important factor in the performance measure of the HDDs is the rotation speed of the disks. The two most common rotation speeds available for the HDDs in the market right now are the 5400 RPM and the 7200 RPM disk. Higher the rotation speeds of the disk, higher will be the data read and write speeds of the disk. Now let us talk about the SSD. The SSD stands for solid state drives. This SSD is a device that uses integrated circuits as memory to store data. It is also called as solid state disk. The SSDs do not have any physical rotating disks such as the HDDs, but instead work on the flash memory technology. It also uses newer form factors such as the M.2 and newer protocols such as the NVM Express that have been developed specifically to address the needs of the SSDs. But SSDs that connect via the traditional form factors of the HDDs and protocols like the SATA and the SAS are also largely available in the market, which makes them easy to use with your machines. It can be said clearly as to who developed the first SSDs. However, Wikipedia mentions that an early, if not the first, semiconductor storage device capable with a hard disk interface, for example, an SSD as defined, was the 1978 Storage Tech 4305. In in 1991, the SanDisk Corporation, then known as SanDisk Corporation, shipped the first SSD, a 20 megabyte solid-state drive, which sold for around $1,000. It was used by IBM in a ThinkPad laptop. Well, now let us draw up some comparisons between the HDDs and the SSDs. The HDDs have slower read and write speeds, with the average being 50 to 120 megabytes per second to the fastest ones achieving the speeds of more than 200 megabytes per second, whereas the average speeds of the SSDs are generally more than 200 megabytes per second up to 550 megabytes per second, and the fastest cutting edge drives like the ones by Intel and Samsung achieving speeds of up to 5 gigahertz per second. This obviously enables a much greater performance on the computers using SSDs as compared to their HDD counterparts. Like the average boot up time on the SSD systems is 10 to 13 seconds, whereas the boot up time of the computers with hard disk drives is 30 to 40 seconds. The moving disk and the head for reading and writing data on the hard disk drives can also produce some noise and vibrations on the systems, which can be annoying at times, whereas there is no such noise or vibration in SSD due to the absence of any moving part. Well, since the HDDs used electromagnetic forms of data storage, there can be data losses in the event of a contact with strong magnetic field, whereas SSDs are immune to these magnetic fields. The solid-state drives also use much less power as compared to the HDDs on average, which can be a significant factor on laptop computers which run on batteries. The combination of no moving parts and lesser power draws also has an implication on the amount of heat produced on the system, and SSDs are cooler than the HDDs. All these points in the favor of SSDs do not mean that HDDs are obsolete. SSDs are more expensive as compared to HDDs, although their prices are coming down as they are becoming more and more common. Also, the storage capacity of SSDs is less compared to the HDDs. You can get SSDs storing up to 4 terabytes of data and HDDs storing up to 10 terabytes of data, although these figures can change very soon. Most of the SSDs still store data in the electrical charges, which slowly over time leaks if they are left without power for longer periods, like 2 or more years. This makes them unfit for the archival purposes. So which one should you get? Well, it all depends on you. If you are on a tight budget, you can go for an HDD. But if you have a healthy amount of money to spend, you should go for an SSD since it offers greater performance and lower latency. You can also look at the options of the PCs which have both SSD at lower capacity for the storage of the OS and some other games or software that you might want to run faster, and a higher capacity HDD which stores all your other files. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it and subscribe the channel.